It was supposed to be a time for celebrating the holidays, but on December 26, 1996, the Ramseys were instead grieving the loss of their youngest child, 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey.
The child beauty queen had been found sexually assaulted and murdered in the basement of the family's Boulder, Colorado home.
Now, nearly 3 decades later, a new Netflix documentary is bringing the horrific murder back into the spotlight and asking the question, who killed JonBenet?
This case shocked the nation and became a tabloid obsession, and this is what some of the actual news coverage looked like back then.
Our first report begins 1 year after the tragic murder of JonBenet.
It has been a year since a 5-year-old girl became more famous than most people do in a lifetime. She did it by dying. As we hear from Alicia Acuna, while JonBenet Ramsey's name is well known, her killer is still anonymous.
The morning of December 26, 1996, investigators are called to a kidnapping that quickly becomes a murder investigation. The case is anything but normal. JonBenet Ramsey's parents, wealthy and prominent in the Boulder community, tell police they found a 3-page handwritten ransom note on the back staircase of their home. Police find no signs of forced entry, no footprints in the snow. John Ramsey tells them he locked all of the doors before going to bed. Police search the home but find nothing.
We were gearing up to manage a kidnapping situation.
Hours pass without any word from a kidnapper. Police ask John Ramsey to check the house to see if anything is out of place. Ramsey, it is later reported, immediately heads to a room in the basement. Minutes later, he emerges holding his daughter's body. The autopsy indicates JonBenet was found with a ligature around her neck, a fractured skull, and that she had been sexually assaulted. According to search warrants, police believe Patsy Ramsey wrote the ransom note, but have no conclusive proof. In April, the Ramseys give their first formal interview to police, and Boulder DA Alex Hunter publicly calls the Ramseys a focus of the murder investigation.
But let me assure you that I did not kill JonBenet.
I did not kill my daughter, JonBenet.
The Ramseys say an intruder killed their daughter. Meanwhile, the police investigation is crumbling. The lead investigator announces in October he is leaving the force. Nearing the first anniversary, police introduce a new lead investigator, Mark Beckner, who assures the news media and the public the case is not stalled.
I'm confident that it will be solved, yes.
And Beckner says the Ramseys are still a focus of the investigation.
They do remain under an umbrella of suspicion, but we're not ready to name any suspects.
In Boulder, Alicia Acuna, Fox News.
Just a year and a half after the little beauty queen's murder, conflicts, changes, and accusations shake up the investigation, and still no arrests have been made in the case.
One of the lead investigators in the murder of JonBenet Ramsey has now quit the case, accusing the Boulder DA of mishandling the investigation in favor of politics. We get that story from reporter Greg Lamott.
A former detective in the JonBenet Ramsey murder case wrote a blistering letter of resignation, attacking the district attorney and claiming, among other things, quote, there is evidence critical to the investigation that, to this day, has never been collected, as well as other evidence that sits today untested in the laboratory. In a letter obtained by ABC, former Detective Steve Thomas claims prosecutors in the district attorney's office blocked efforts to subpoena the parents' telephone and credit card records and claims evidence was improperly shared with the Ramseys' attorneys. Thomas, in the letter, said his primary reason for leaving his job is the belief the district attorney's office continues to mishandle the Ramsey case. It's been more than a year and a half since JonBenet Ramsey was found strangled and beaten in the basement of her Boulder home. Early on, police said the 6-year-old girl's parents were a focus of the investigation, but no one has been arrested. Thomas, in his letter, said, quote, it is my belief the district attorney's office has effectively crippled this case. In response, Police Chief Mark Beckner issued a statement saying, quote, I am disappointed that Steve felt the need to vent his frustrations in the investigation. Beckner went on to say, we continue to work closely with the DA's office on completing assigned tasks. I continue to have confidence in the investigative team. District Attorney Alex Hunter in July was expected to make a decision as to whether to present the case to a grand jury, but no decision has been announced. A spokesperson for Hunter says the district attorney is out of town until next week, and it's not known if he will respond to Thomas's letter of resignation. Greg Lamont.
Well, the bickering between the police and prosecutors in the JonBenet Ramsey murder case is becoming legendary, yet no arrests have been made in the case. Julie Hayden reports that some in Colorado think it's time the governor got involved.
Boulder detective Steve Thomas said he was so upset about the way the Boulder DA's office is handling the JonBenet Ramsey murder case that he turned in his badge for a carpenter's hammer. Thomas was one of the lead detectives in the Ramsey case, and in a scathing resignation letter, he blasted Boulder DA Alex Hunter. While Thomas's message was heard loud and clear all the way to the governor's office.
The content of that letter was pretty direct and forceful.
Governor Romer explained that he has asked 4 metro area district attorneys to get together and give him advice and counsel on whether he should intervene and appoint a special prosecutor. He says he'll meet with them in person if they want or accept a letter of recommendation. And he hopes to have a decision in 5 to 7 days.
The issue now is, as you go forward, will you get a better and more just solution to this, maintaining the present leadership or changing that leadership?
Craig Silverman says he'd be surprised if the 4 local DAs recommend a special prosecutor, but he says it might help minimize the conflicts between the Boulder cops and the DA should the case ever go to trial.
Detective Thomas's letter was just the latest salvo in a long, increasingly hostile war between the police and the prosecutors. Any good defense attorney will try to exploit that at trial, but if you remove Alex Hunter as the prosecutor, the special prosecutor could say, hey, I had nothing to do with that.
And that was reporter Julie Hayden in Colorado.
With this being such a high-profile case with lots of media attention, the grand jury found out what being on this case could mean for their lives, and reporters on the scene are given a stern warning.
Well, the Boulder, Colorado DA says that JonBenet Ramsey's parents are under what he calls an umbrella of suspicion. This as the grand jury begins hearing evidence in the case. Carol McKinley is in Colorado with the report. Carol.
That's right, Carol. This could make or break the case, really. If the grand jury doesn't come up with an indictment, the case will just be shelved for a while. But this grand jury met for its second full day in secret in what could be a long, tedious process. They were escorted from the Boulder County Justice Center to their cars. After that first full day Tuesday, these are 8 women, 4 men, and 5 alternates who are just now realizing what being on this grand jury is going to mean to their lives. The cameras are going to be on them coming and going, and their names and bios are on the internet, their faces plastered on the local papers. In fact, what we know about them is one is a single mother, one's a grandfather, one is a pyrotechnician, another woman calls herself a good old gal. So at this point, the good old gal and the folks who are just normal people, citizens of Boulder coming in to make this big decision, are learning that their lives are going to be affected, so are their families and their jobs.
How long and how hard are they going to work on this case? Are they going to work 2 days a week, or are they going to work 4 days a week? Are they going to work at night? What kind of hours are they going to keep? Hopefully, given that this is a murder, there will be some sense of urgency now.
The Boulder County Sheriff just came out with a memo and handed it to the media in the parking lot here. It's from the judge presiding over the Ramsey case, reminding us, just a friendly reminder now, to stay 25 feet away from the grand jurors, and if we get any closer, we'll be sent to jail, citing contempt of court charges. So today and yesterday were just routine. They're being briefed on the case, but they'll be hearing some interesting evidence, some of which Fox News broke a couple of months ago, but which has been furthered. There was a fiber found on the duct tape which was over JonBenet's mouth the night she was murdered and the day she was found, which has matched with Patsy Ramsey's clothing, the clothing she wore on December 26th. Now, I'm Carol McKinley reporting live from Boulder in this second full day. Carol, Mario, back to you.
There have been many suspects over the years in the investigation to find JonBenet's murderer, but in 1999, a new suspect was named, and it was another member of JonBenet's family.
The prime suspect in the murder of 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey is reportedly her brother Burke, who is now 12. Star Magazine says their parents, John and Patsy Ramsey, are now in plea bargaining negotiations with prosecutors in Colorado. The magazine also says the DA wants Patsy Ramsey punished for her alleged role in faking a ransom note and trying to cover up the murder on Christmas night back in 1996.
So, who did it? Could a voice analysis of the people interviewed in connection with the murder help solve the case?
I did not kill my daughter, JonBenet.
I love that child.
And I know I'm innocent. I know they know I'm innocent.
I've never even met the little girl.
You've heard their stories. You've heard their pleas for innocence.
This family.
But who may be lying and who may be telling the truth?
I did not kill JonBenet.
When you watch John and Patsy Ramsey, do you believe their story? Both refused to testify before a grand jury looking into the murder of their daughter. They also refused to take a polygraph test. So in the end, did they do it, or was it someone else?
Suspected deception in the following segment.
This is a voice stress analyzer, more commonly known as the Truster Pro. It's used by 700 police forces across the United States. By analyzing voice, it is designed to calculate percentages of deception. But just like a polygraph test, its reliability is debated, and its results are not admissible in court. Don Bender, a licensed forensic psychotherapist, is trained to operate the Truster, and we called upon his services.
The polygraph measures physiological functions, blood pressure, galvanic skin response, which is sweating, and also respiration. The computerized voice stress analyzer, on the other hand, measures the quality of the voice, particularly the frequency and what are called micro tremors in the vocal cords.
We took interviews from people police had interviewed in connection with the murder of JonBenet Ramsey. The first was Bud Henderson, whose ex-wife once worked for John Ramsey and allegedly misappropriated money from the Ramsey business.
They also at the time asked me if I could take a lie detector test. Excuse me. And I told them I would think about that.
Mr. Henderson, in general, was quite believable. The only instance where there seemed to be some question of credibility was where he said that he'd be most willing to actually take a polygraph.
Our second test was Bill McReynolds, who played Santa Claus at the Ramseys' Christmas party the night before JonBenet was found murdered.
I have a little stardust that she gave me.
Deception was indicated in the following segment.
Little girl, and she actually gave Santa a present.
Some indications of exaggeration when he was talking about gifts that JonBenet had given him.
But the most interesting findings by far were those of JonBenet's parents, John and Patsy Ramsey.
I did not kill my daughter JonBenet.
The one statement that actually came across as believable was his direct statement that he wasn't directly responsible for killing JonBenet.
But watch and listen to what the Truster indicated at this statement.
What do you want to say to the killer of your daughter?
We'll find you. We will find you.
Deception was indicated in the following segment.
We'll find you.
According to the voice stress analyzer, there were portions of his statements having to do with the search for the real culprit that seemed less than wholly believable.
Let me assure you that I did not kill JonBenet.
The voice stress analyzer graphs from Mrs. Ramsey were particularly interesting because on the most relevant question, did she kill JonBenet, there wasn't a significant reaction that really questioned her believability.
Like her husband, the great percentage of unbelievability comes at this point.
Suspected deception in the following segment.
God knows who you are, and we will find you.
Right there is the we're going to find you. The highest peak on one of the graphs we looked at was the one that occurred right at the end, where she refers to the killer being out there and that he better watch it because they're going to find him. And that showed a peak that was a strong indicator that she didn't wholly believe what she was saying.
In terms of the voice stress analyzer, if someone is stressed, as anyone who has lost a child would be, would that not affect the results?
Not necessarily, because extreme emotion is going to be there whether they're saying something that they believe or something that they're trying to be deceptive about. And what we measure is the difference between the two.
Who killed JonBenet may forever remain a mystery. Did her parents have a part in it? Only she will ever know. Mary Garofalo, Fox News.
In 2001, the former housekeeper for the Ramseys told her side of the story.
John and Patsy Ramsey's former housekeeper may be able to publish a book on what she knows about the death of JonBenet Ramsey. Fox's Carol McKinley has more.
Linda Hoffman Pugh spent 8 hours in front of a Boulder County grand jury in January of 1999. She was an important witness because as the housekeeper, she knew a lot about the day-to-day life in the Ramsey household. This is what the grand jury wanted to know. They wanted to find out about JonBenet's relationship with her mother, about her bedwetting.
They wanted to know about a Swiss Army knife found near JonBenet's body, which came from a hiding place. Hoffman Pugh told them about a blanket which was wrapped around JonBenet when she was found in the basement, a blanket which would have come from a tiny upstairs dryer. This is information, Hoffman Pugh says, only a Ramsey family member would know. After a full day of questioning centering on Patsy Ramsey and her daughter JonBenet, Hoffman Pugh was convinced her former employee was the target.
I think that maybe Patsy had multiple personalities. I saw that in her one day, and I think that she may have gotten upset with JonBenet for some reason, and she may have hit her and not meant to hurt her. I don't think she meant to hurt JonBenet. You know, I think it was an accident, and then it just continued from there.
Federal Judge Wiley Daniels said the former housekeeper's First Amendment rights would be violated if she were silenced by grand jury secrecy laws. Now, Hoffman Pugh plans to write a book about her experiences, and now anyone who testified before the Ramsey grand jury can talk about it. We talked with Lynn Wood, the Ramsey's attorney, who says he's happy about this ruling. He has another spin on it, though. He says that the truth will come out about the grand jury, that it didn't have enough evidence to indict his clients. By the way, John and Patsy Ramsey have always maintained they did not kill their daughter, JonBenet. In Denver, Carol McKinley, Fox News.
So, where is the case today? On November 21st, 2024, JonBenet's father talked to Good Day New York's Rosanna Scotto and Kurt Menefee. Here's what he had to say.
December 26, 1996, just hours after her family celebrated Christmas, the mother of 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey called police to report that her daughter was missing. Soon after, JonBenet's body would be discovered by her dad in the basement of their home. She was sexually assaulted, brutally murdered. The case turned into a national obsession. Everybody wanted to know who killed JonBenet.
Here we are 28 years later. The murder still remains unsolved, and now a new docuseries looks at the case from a new perspective. Cold Case. Who Killed JonBenet Ramsey investigates the mishandling of the case by law enforcement and the media. Joining us right now is Emmy-winning director Joe Berlinger and John Ramsey, JonBenet's father. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for inviting us.
I'll start with you first, John. 28 years after the tragedy, what made you want to revisit it?
Well, I've never left it. We knew pretty immediately that small town police department didn't even have a homicide department
in Boulder,
Colorado. And so our effort really became get help, and they refused help. And they've refused help for 25 years. So that's been a passion of mine, to get the police to do their job, frankly. And that's probably why I would do an interview like this, is to keep pressure on the police. And I think we're making some progress. They seem to have been cleaning house lately. A Citizens Review Board recommended termination of 5 of their detectives for poor investigative techniques, performance. One of which was the guy that was our detective. He was more of a roadblock than a helper. And they brought in a new chief from outside the system, which was huge in our book. So we're hoping the new chief will change the culture and accept help. Lots of help has been offered. Federal government, the FBI, cutting-edge DNA labs would like to help if they can. The police have to ask them. That's the way our system works. It's really a screwy system.
Joe, you've done so many investigative documentaries, and we talked about winning Emmy Awards. What brought you to this case? Because if we go back to 1996 or the early 2000s, a lot of people believed then that somehow the family was involved in her killing.
Yeah. Well, the number one reason I wanted to revisit the case is I believe the case can be solved. There's DNA testing that has to happen. Old items that were tested need to be retested. Technology has gone a long way. Certain items went to the crime lab that were never tested, but the most important DNA test that needs to happen, and we don't understand the intransigence of the Boulder Police Department. They say they're working on it, but it's been a long time, is there is a DNA sample in this case where the blood of John's daughter was mixed with an unidentified foreign male person, and there is a mixed sample of DNA. DNA technology now is so sophisticated that it can be separated and a new profile created. And that profile can be used for standard DNA testing and also genealogical DNA testing, the 23andMe family DNA. That has been such an amazing tool recently in a lot of cold cases.
So you can't get that evidence back and do your own testing?
Well, no. That is kind of the last straw attempt if we can't get the police to do it. I think we're making some progress, but we don't know for sure.
What has it been like for you and your family? I know your wife passed. To live under this cloud of suspicion.
Well, Patsy said it well early on. I said, look, I can't be hurt anymore than I've been hurt by the loss of my child. These accusations and craziness that was going on in the media, and then the police were feeding that, quite frankly. Said, it doesn't matter. I'm lost.
Who do you think did it?
He's being humble.
Right.
This is the most brutalized family in American history, as far as I'm concerned. Super irresponsible, tunnel vision police force accusing this family of a crime that, if you look at the autopsy report, it's just not plausible that it was committed in the way the police thought. And they were feeding stories to the press that were false or partially false, and the press just ran with it, and it just created a tsunami of suspicion against these people.
So who did it?
Well, we don't know. The problem is there is bad DNA in this case. We need good DNA, and everyone who was looked at as a suspect originally was dismissed off of bad DNA. We need to look at everybody again, and we need DNA. That is really the main reason we're doing this.
I want to take a quick look at a piece from the clip from the show.
The detectives who were at the Ramsey house called dispatch saying that JonBenet's body had been located.
There was a group of police investigators that had gathered at the Boulder Police Department that morning. When the word came in that JonBenet's body had been found, a person inside that meeting told me that one investigator hissed in kind of an undertone and a whisper to another one, "I knew it, they killed their daughter."
All right, and so you can see from this clip, it's a 3-part docu-series coming out on Netflix next week. John, I want to ask you, we go back to, and I said, people assumed, a lot of people did, I'll say it that way, right there with the police department.
Sure.
The family's involved in this somehow from day one.
Yep.
You've lived under this cloud for almost 30 years now. Are you looking for absolution from this? Even if the murder doesn't get solved, do you think that this will help absolve
it doesn't matter to my life. Even if the murderer is caught, convicted, confessed, there's still going to be 5 or 10% of people out there. Nah, I don't believe that. It was the dad. That's just life. We were overwhelmed by people's compassion for us. People would stop us on the street. "Are you John and Patsy?" "Yeah, I just want to give you a hug. I'm so sorry for what's being said about you and done about you." That happened all the time. People would ask, "Well, how is it to be out in public? You're this accused child killer." I said, "It's wonderful. People are not stupid. They know we're being mistreated, misaccused. They're wonderful to us." And made me a more compassionate person too. Everybody's carrying a burden in life. That's just life, and made me more compassionate to realize that, people I talk to that I don't even know, there's more to their life than I think, and so people were wonderful to us. Media was horrible. The police were horrible, and the police were feeding the media. Their whole strategy to solve the case, and we were told this by the DA, they didn't think you acted right that morning, which I'm not sure how you're supposed to act. And they're going to bring intense pressure on both of Patsy and I so that the innocent one will turn the guilty one in. They concluded on day one that it was the parents. It's always the parents. Easy case to solve. We just got to figure out which one. And so their whole strategy was to release misleading information and, wink, wink accusations, and the media ran with it. And so it didn't work. I mean, yes, they did convince most of the country that we were guilty, but they couldn't arrest us.
Right.
Well, because the evidence was contrary to that conclusion.
We wish you peace in your life, because
Thank
I'm
you.
sure living with this has got to be a very heavy burden.
Well, people have been wonderful, and I appreciate being on a show like this to keep pressure on the police to do their damn job.
John Ramsey and Joe Berlinger.